Good evening, everyone. Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Evening.
Shall we start?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, everyone present here. My name is Madhu Mitra, and I'm the part of Managing Committee at Bureau for the Empowerment of Arbitration and Mediation, a not-for-profit organization based in Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. We are very much delighted to welcome you all for today's webinar. Before beginning, I would like to give some important points regarding the webinar. Please use raise hand option to ask your questions to the speaker, and also participants can pose their questions in questions tab during Q&A session. Also, you face audio or video interruptions. Participants who attend the entire session will be awarded with a participation certificate by filling the feedback form. On this great living ledger and a well-accompanied arbitrator of our times. Mr. Nariman has served as the president of International Council for Commercial Arbitration since 1994 and president of Bar Council of India since 1991. And his book, Harmony Amidst Disharmony, remains as a must-read for both the beginners and professionals. He remains as an inspiration to the young professionals and students to emulate his principles. To begin with, I would like to discuss briefly about our organization. Bureau for the Empowerment of Arbitration and Mediation has been established by area professionals and like-minded law students to create awareness about alternative dispute resolution. The main motto of our forum are to create awareness among the general public and to provide training to both the legal and allied professionals. To emerge as a bridge between the government law colleges and the arbitration fraternity in imparting the contemporary knowledge to the students. Regularly conduct continuous professional development sessions, workshops for the benefit of GLC students. To foster institutional arbitration in the Tier 2 cities and beyond. To regularly conduct webinars for the GLC students and the industrial professionals. To establish an arbitration institution that is accredited by the proposed Arbitration Council of India. On behalf of BEAM, I welcome the keynote speakers.
Thank you, Madhumitra. So before beginning the session, infrastructure and construction projects are the key indicators of a growing economy. To ensure timely implementation of infrastructure projects, especially post-COVID, there should be a hassle-free dispute resolution mechanism in place. So today's webinar will explore the insights of various dispute resolution mechanisms viable in the construction industry. One of our session speaker, Dr. M.I. Abdul Aleem, has started his career as a lecturer from Kumaraguru College of Technology, Coimbatore. He switched over to become a project geotechnical engineer in the Public Works Department of Brunei, Darussalam in 1990. And then he has worked as a senior engineer in an international consulting firm. He has handled a project successfully worth multi-million. One of his prestigious projects includes the geosynthetic earth drains. Dr. Aleem has published and presented several research papers at national and international level. He had filed patents in geopolymer concrete and in foundry sands. At present, Dr. Aleem is a professor of engineering at PSG Institute of Technology and Applied Research, Coimbatore. Now, I would like to invite Dr. M.I. Abdul Aleem, sir, to give the inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Zanofer. Is it audible to you?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Respected chief guest of today's function, Mr. Anil, Advocate and Solicitor of Singapore, beloved moderators from BEAM, Mr. Suraj and Mr. Mohammed Zanofer, and Ms. Madhumida, my dear colleagues, participants from various institutions, student friends, a very good evening to one and all present here. I also join with BEAM to welcome our chief guest, Mr. Anil, for sparing his valuable time to educate the young budding engineers. First of all, I thank Mr. Zanofer for inviting me and providing me an opportunity to talk among you during this COVID time. It is indeed a pleasure for me to do the inaugural address for this wonderful webinar, Appropriate Dispute Resolution in the Construction Industry, organized by Bureau for the Empowerment of Arbitration and Mediation, shortly called as BEAM. As civil engineers, all of you are aware that BEAM is the most important part of any building. Without BEAM, you can't construct any buildings. Now BEAM is organizing a webinar on dispute resolution, which is an essential one for the construction industry. As a civil engineer, I personally thank the organizers for conducting a webinar on a topic which is in need of the hour. The construction industry is always facing many conflict issues with respect to materials, quality of work, appearance, and so on. Traditionally, parties would enter into litigation, often a costly and long-winded means of resolving a dispute. Over the years, various methods of alternative dispute resolution have been introduced into the construction industry as a means to avoid lengthy and expensive litigation. The most common forms of dispute resolution are arbitrations and mediations. What is arbitration? Why is it required? Disputes are part of human life. In ancient times, disputes were referred to village panchayats for speedy settlements. You might have seen in many Tamil movies. Negotiation is one of the best fought in arbitration, where both the parties sink their differences and arrive an amicable settlement by considering the interest of the project and also the benefits to get it from the projects. Arbitration means engaging a third party who is not biased to any part, who can study the case carefully and give judgment which should be accepted by both parties. Arbitration is a judicial process. Our chief guest is the right person to talk much about this. The advantages of arbitrations are speed, lower cost, flexible and less formal than the court. Of course, cost is involved. Both the parties have to pay the arbitrator. Disputes in the construction industry are inevitable. All of you are aware that few years back in Chennai, Maulivakkam, there was a major failure of a multi-story buildings. People are talking, whose fault was that? And debates were also conducted. The architects and structural engineers proved that the failure was not due to improper planning or inadequate design. They were able to justify their stand by using the government prescribed guidelines. The government of India has given design guidelines which are given in the IS code books. The builder had removed some of the columns in the parking area without getting the consent from the structural designers, and some additional floors were also constructed against the approved plan by the corporation. That was the major cause for the failure. For small construction of a single or double-story house, also faced lot of disputes. The client is always looking the builder with suspicious because lot of adulterated materials are available in the market. Even some materials would come with a reputed brand name also. Sometimes the contractor may also be trapped into this by seeing the reputed brand name. In that case, dispute will come. If you go to the court, it will take years to solve. So here, arbitration is required. Nowadays, the design consultants are vetting their design with reputed designers or academic institutions like IIT, IAC, NIT, etc., so that there won't be any design failures later on. In order to check the design, the courts are playing major roles. In India, many arbitration forums are functioning. It is the duty of every civil engineer to know about the arbitration class and include it in their contract document before starting the work. The civil engineers are playing various roles like architects, structural designers, contractors, project management consultants, supervisors, etc. If he is well aware of this class, then only he can successfully complete the project in time. In addition, he can protect himself during failures if he carried out his duties as per the guidelines. Hence, this webinar is a very important one for all the budding engineers. With this small keynote, I formally inaugurate the webinar Appropriate Dispute Resolution in the Construction Industry. I request all the participants to hear carefully the address of our chief guest so that at the end of the session, you can carry some useful information which will be the success of this webinar. I once again thank the organizers for providing me an opportunity to share some of my views in this platform. Particularly, I thank Mr. Zanofer, who had constantly called me and confirmed that the things are moving in the right way for the successful conduction of this webinar. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. As the saying goes, to hear something straight from the horse's mouth. The inaugural speech about the appropriate dispute resolution in the construction industry was an excellent and resourceful to hear from the professor and the head of Department Civil Engineering himself. Thank you, dear sir. Now I kindly invite our co-moderator, Mr. Suraj, to introduce our beloved keynote speaker, Mr. Anil.
You're on silent, Saurabh.
Suraj, actually, you are in mute.
Yeah, mute. So you have to unmute, yes.
Sorry, very sorry. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Aleem, sir, for your thoughts. It was so enriching, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before I introduce our next speaker, Mr. Anil Changarat, I would like to give a small intro on our topic, alternate dispute resolution and arbitration. They both may seem synonymous with the construction industry. But the reality is that there are several other forms of dispute resolution simply because such options provide a variety of methods of approaching and resolving the issues and disputes. Mr. Anil will discuss some of these concepts methods, including mediation, neutral evaluation, expert determination, adjudication, and the dispute board. Mr. Anil Changarat, as a dispute avoidance and resolution practitioner, is an accredited mediator with the Singapore Mediation Center and Singapore Family Justice Court, Asian International Arbitration Center, Vietnam International Commercial Mediation Center. He is also an arbitrator, fellows of the Chartered Singapore and Philippines Institute of Arbitrators. He is also an adjudicator in international treaty arbitration at the AIAC and the Dispute Resolution Board Foundation Country Representative of Singapore. He is also an advocate and solicitor of Singapore since 1995. He is also a solicitor of England and Wales since 2009 and also qualified as Barrister of Law from Middle Temple of England and Wales. Mr. Anil has also authored a book on resolving disputes, a guide to the options for appropriate dispute resolution in 2019, and he has also published several articles on construction law and ODR practice. I now invite Mr. Anil Changarat from the Changarat Chambers LLC and Changarat International Consultancy on behalf of Bureau of the Empowerment of Arbitration and Mediation to enrich us with his knowledge on appropriate dispute resolution in the construction industry. The stage is all yours, Mr. Anil.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think Dr. Aleem had said a couple of very interesting things that are things that you must pay attention to. He said that arbitration is an important aspect that that judicial process must take note of. He also mentioned about major failures and the successful completion of projects. Now, if you take this concept of how projects can fail and how it is important to successfully complete the projects, you then take a look back at what BEAM is about. The lady who started speaking first when she did the welcome, she mentioned that you are in alternate dispute resolution professionals here to make all of you aware of what ADR is about. right? But the key of it is this. She then went on to talk about arbitration. But Suraj clearly explained to you what the framework of my talk is. I'll just give you a brief of the synopsis. It says that while alternate dispute resolution and arbitration seem synonymous with the construction industry, the reality for some years now is that there are several other appropriate forms of dispute resolution, simply because such options provide a variety of methods and of approaching the issues and disputes, avoiding and resolving these. So I am going to speak a few about these. I'm going to speak a little bit about consensual and then several other adjudicative methods of dispute resolution, including neutral evaluation, expert determination, dispute boards, and adjudication. Now, what you need to know, I appreciate, is this. Everybody refers to it as alternate, but I have for several years now used it as appropriate dispute resolution. The reason why I say appropriate is most of you are very familiar with arbitration, most of you are familiar with litigation, and most of you are familiar with mediation. But the world has changed. The COVID-19 is a perfect example of how the world has changed and how a lot of people in various webinars that are presented around the world have repeatedly said that we're going to come out of the COVID-19 with massive disputes and arbitration is going to be skyrocketing. I do not agree. What I would say is this: there's going to be an incredible amount of issues that parties want resolved, but they do not want to go to arbitration because they can't afford the amount of time and energy spent in arbitration or litigating the matter is going to be costly. And what they want is an approach to get them to resolve the disputes. And that is why you have to appreciate that it's no longer alternate dispute resolution, but it is appropriate dispute resolution. And so let me just speak to you a little bit about that in detail. You have to appreciate that in the construction industry, it's a complex project. It's a complex exercise with multiple parties involved. And right from the word go, while the contracts are being executed and everybody looks at the dispute resolution clause and they pay no attention to it when they're drafting the dispute resolution clause, only because they feel that they'll never get into an argument or into a dispute, what you find is from the word go, everything and almost every aspect of the project, there are going to be issues. There are going to be disputes and there are going to be fallouts. But the question is, how do you then ensure that these projects can be executed as fast as possible, put through an exercise where least amount of time is spent outside in courts or in arbitration or in dispute arenas, but the project can move along? So this is what you need to appreciate, that, arbitration is no longer, in my view, arbitration is no longer going to be in the forefront of avoiding. It becomes a question of avoiding disputes as opposed to just resolving disputes. And even in the methods that I'm going to talk about would give you an avenue for avoidance. But even in resolving disputes, you'd find that some of the examples I give you are going to be far more appropriate, far more practicable, far more sensible to use as a method of dispute resolution rather than going through arbitration. I mean, in the Q&A, we can talk a little bit more about that, but let me get straight down to it. Now, when you talk about the consensual dispute resolution, you have things like negotiations, you have things like conciliation, you have things like mediation, right? Where parties, while they may appoint a third party, it is very much in the control of the parties. The parties get to decide at the end of the day how their disputes are to be settled. The parties decide what terms they're willing to give up. Parties decide how they want to settle the matter. So that's what you call consensual process. On the flip side, you have something called adjudicative process, where a third party makes the decisions. So it can be an adjudicator and adjudicate in an adjudication process. It can be an arbitrator in an arbitration process. It can be a judge in a litigation court process. It can be a neutral evaluator in a neutral evaluation. It can be an expert determinator in an expert deterministic situation. So you have consensual and you have adjudicative. So let's straight get down to the methods. Let's take mediation, for example, right? Section 3 of the Mediation Act in Singapore states that it is a process of comprising one or more sessions in which one or more mediators assist parties to a dispute to all or any of the following with a view of facilitating a resolution. So what the mediator does is that it assists the parties to come to a satisfactory solution that the parties themselves decide on. The mediator is there just to facilitate the dispute resolution mechanism. All right. Now, with mediation, you have an ad hoc mediation where the parties can decide that they want to appoint a third party themselves and then get it mediated. Or you have an institutional mediation where an institution provides the framework and the mechanism for you to go have your dispute resolved. In the Q&A, we can talk a little bit more about that. In Singapore, we have the Singapore Mediation Center, we have the Singapore International Mediation Center. All of those provide an institutional framework for how mediations can be carried out. All right. One of the other things that in mediation is very important to appreciate is the Singapore Convention on Mediation. It's just now come into force on the 12th of September this year because it was ratified by 4 countries. There were over 54 countries that, there were 46 countries that signed on for it initially last year, but by the time it was ratified, 53 countries had signed on it. Now, what the Singapore Convention does is it's the equivalent of the New York Convention insofar as arbitration is concerned. With the Singapore Convention, if you have a mediated settlement of an international mediation and you have issues with enforcement, this convention allows you to enforce in the jurisdiction of the countries that have signed up on it. All right, so it gives you a force. Very often you find that people will ask this question about whether or not mediation is binding. With the convention, you know that it's binding and it's got a sense of force behind it if at all parties default on it. So then you have the Singapore Convention on that. All right. I suppose insofar as mediation is concerned, there are also, you need to appreciate there is something called facilitative mediation where the mediator is only there to facilitate the parties coming to a decision. Or you have evaluative mediation where the mediator may get involved in making decisions on behalf of the parties or evaluating the situation and telling the parties this is where it's likely to go. Then you have something called transformative mediation or collaborative mediation. These are some of the examples of the different types of mediations that can go on. All right, and now there are some countries or some institutions that have this thing called an ARP-MED-ARP, arbitration, mediation, dispute resolution mechanism. So, for example, the Singapore International Mediation Center and the Singapore International Arbitration Center has got a ARP-MED-ARP protocol. It's a protocol where you commence the proceedings by way of an arbitration, you stop after you do the introductory part, and then you go into another room where it's then mediated, and if it's settled, it'll come back into the arbitration and you record it as an award that can be enforced under the New York Convention, right? So that you have to keep in mind that there's an option of arbitration, mediation, arbitration. Next, let me talk a little bit about neutral evaluation. It's a form of dispute resolution mechanism where a neutral third party assesses the merits of the parties' respective cases, including the facts, evidence, legality of specific issues, and then provides an estimate of the party's likelihood of success at trial, right? So it's a very, very interesting option. I told the organizers that I've got a paper that's going to be about 20 to 25 pages long. I would give you references and I'd give you links in that paper that you can go read about these appropriate dispute resolution mechanisms. So neutral evaluation is one. The courts in Singapore have got a neutral evaluation mechanism in place and you can read about it and it's quite interesting. Parties have a choice to decide whether or not the evaluation should be binding or not. So the parties can decide at the start. If they don't want it to be a binding, they can, as Dr. Alim had mentioned about negotiations, right? That is a key factor. So if parties don't use the neutral evaluation as a binding document, they can use it as a method, as a basis for them to negotiate a settlement. So you can do that, or you can decide that it's binding. If it's binding, then it can be in a form of an agreement, and it can be executed as an agreement. And if there's a default, the parties can then sue on the breach of that agreement, right? So it really encourages parties to confront their position systematically at an early stage and identify and focus on the key issues. This way, the likelihood of a success of a settlement increase, and if the parties understand the probable outcome, they can move along quite comfortably, and that's what the idea of a neutral evaluation is. All right. Now, the difference between a neutral evaluation and a mediation is simply that the mediation, the mediator facilitates, right? Sometimes he may give some evaluative comments, but the neutral evaluator would provide a whole detailed explanation for that. So that's what neutral evaluation is. Next, we have something called expert determination. Expert determination involves the appointment of a third-party expert to decide technical issues. He does this by giving usually a binding determination where the parties can then go and enforce on it. An expert may also render a decision that's not binding if the parties so decide, but it's really about technical issues. So if you come into a dispute and you find that there really comes down to not legalities but technical issues, and you find that the parties feel they may want to go to an expert, a third-party witness to come and side for them, they can instead decide that they want to go take the matter to an expert determinator who then makes a determination, and the framework can be set and the parties can agree to the structure of the expert determination. Again, in my paper, I'll give you some examples of it and then tell you a little bit about how the expert determinator needs to use reasonable skill and care, and there must be due process in how he executes that exercise. But again, the fundamentals of an expert determinator is that he looks at technical issues. Now, having said a few of these things, mediation, neutral evaluation, expert determination, you realize something, that hang on a minute, I'm in the construction industry, I've got a construction dispute. Now I'm starting to see that arbitration is not necessarily the all and the only way to resolve disputes. Hang on a minute, I've got a serious issue. I want the project to be completed on time. I don't want to get confrontational with the parties. How can I best do that? Maybe, and what Anil is talking about, neutral evaluation, expert determination might be the way. So keep that in mind. We can take it in Q&A later as well. The next method is something called dispute boards. Dispute resolution board, dispute adjudication board, dispute review board. Very interesting concept. Started way back in the 1970s. What it does is that the project, right from the start, forms a team of three people, either a sole dispute board panelist or 2 or 3 people, and it watches over the project throughout the lifetime of that project. Meaning every 2 or 3 months, the parties involved in the project, the contractors that are involved in the project, will put out their disputes or the issues in a short 2 to 5 pages long paper, supported by the necessary document to maybe about 20 or 30 pages of documents, presented to the board, and the board makes a decision or makes an opinion on where they think it goes. So this is a group of people that comes on board and sits on the project and watches over the project. It can be an ad hoc, only called upon when there are problems, or it could be a standing committee that every 3 months will watch over the project. I, for one, am now currently appointed in a project that's going to start in Indonesia for a European entity, and my job is to watch over the project and deal with issues as and when they crop up. Okay, so there are things like the Hong Kong airport, the London Dockland rails have all used this method of dispute resolution, and it's been very successful. Again, like I mentioned, you can have a standing board, or you can have an ad hoc board. All right. You get to select the parties that are involved in that board. You can tailor the requirements. The parties can tailor their requirements and make sure that the board deals with the issues in the manner that they feel best that it should be dealt with. It's speedy, efficient. It doesn't get parties into court. It doesn't get parties into arbitration. It doesn't get parties into a hearing. But instead, it's managed throughout the process. It's a proactive approach to the managing, avoiding and resolving disputes. And let me just give you, there are some examples. You have what is called a dispute avoidance board. You have a dispute review board, a dispute adjudication board, a dispute resolution board. Okay, so all of these can come under, use different forms of contract. So for example, you have the FIDIC form of contract that has got provisions of a dispute board, right? It's called the Dispute Avoidance and Adjudication Board, DAAB, right? Under the FIDIC Red, Silver, and Yellow Book in the 2017. You also have them in the New Engineering Contract 4 dispute boards. You also have them in the ICC form of contracts as well. All right. So this is what dispute boards are about. The last part that I'm going to speak of is about adjudication. Adjudication is a form of dispute resolution mechanism where an independent adjudicator resolves the disputes, provides a determination or a decision, right? And you find that in many countries, adjudication is a method that quickly resolves the dispute. So for example, let's take Singapore for example, right? You have the Building and Construction Industry Security and Payment Act that provides a mechanism, a timeline, strict timelines for which you must take your matter to adjudication, and then it gets resolved at a very early stage. So in a lot of the construction disputes in Singapore, most of the parties go to by way of adjudication. Only very few of them then turn to arbitration if they don't feel that the adjudication methods work. So what happens is that there are these strict timelines, and if you have a claim that you raise, within a period of 6 to 8 weeks, you can get a decision, if not shorter, right? So adjudication is a method that's quite exciting at having your matters resolved in disputes. There's a contractual provision for adjudication, or there's a statutory provision. So some of the examples that I'm just going to give you now are statutory provisions. Like in the Singapore, it's called the Building and Construction Industry Security and Payment Act 2005. It was recently amended last year. In Malaysia, you've got what is called the Construction Industry Payment and Adjudication Act. It's called CIPA, came into force in 2012, and there were amendments made later on. You know, in the United Kingdom, you have the Housing Grants Construction and Regeneration Act of 1996, with amendments coming into force in 2011. In Australia, on the East Coast, you have the Building and Construction Industry Security and Payment Act. In the West Coast, you have the Western Australia Construction Contracts Act, Northern Territory Construction Act. In New Zealand, you've got what's called the Construction Contracts Act. And a couple of other countries are coming online. Hong Kong is looking at having it done. Mauritius is looking at having it done. Ireland already has it in place. So that's another form of dispute resolution. It's got very strict timelines. It's a strict framework, and it's done expeditiously. Contractors at the end get their cash flow moving along because of adjudication. Now, the last part of my talk, I wanted to just introduce a little bit about dispute resolution and technology, and the essence of which I wanted to speak to you briefly about online dispute resolution. That's a fast-moving area, especially now considering the COVID-19 lockdown and people using Zoom and using other technologies. It's an incredible area of dispute resolution. It's something that's been around for a couple of years. In 2016, I published my first paper on online dispute resolution in the Asian Journal of Mediation. Last year, I published my second paper on online dispute resolution. But you find that it's become an incredible method of getting your disputes resolved by going on a platform with a structure in place. So when you talk about structure in place, there is these, what is called the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC. In 2019, they set out an online dispute resolution collaborative framework. So if you go read about it, you'd find that what they've done is that they've put a structure in place to allow disputes to be resolved on a platform in a structured fashion. So the question then is this: do you want to have that form of dispute resolution put in place in resolving your disputes going forward? It's something you may want to consider. There are a whole lot of articles on that. There are some platforms internationally already in place, including the China International Economic and Trade Arbitration Commission's online arbitration. It's called CTEC. The Russian Arbitration Association online platform. And you find that there's a whole lot of institutions that have come up with regulations and guidelines on virtual hearings, on online platforms that they're using, and so on. So this is a quick, very fast overview of dispute resolution mechanisms. Again, I wanted to tell you that, you know, what I hope I put out to you is the fact that arbitration is not the end, the all, the be all. There's all of these methods of dispute resolution that you can adopt. For example, in the Singapore Institute of Architects standard form of contract, I worked on amending the standard form contract, and there's something called the minor works contracts. And in there, we have mediation, expert determination, and arbitration all on the same platform. So parties can then decide whether they want to have their matter resolved by mediation, or if it's a technical area, whether they want to have resolved by expert determination, and if not, then go into arbitration. Of course, you must appreciate that the need for why we have arbitration, especially in the construction industry, is mainly because you know, you need a specialized dispute resolution mechanism. You need specialized people who are familiar with how disputes should be resolved, with the knowledge of the field they are in. And as I mentioned, construction projects, infrastructure projects are complex projects that you need some form of skill. But what I'm saying is that these forms of skill can be imparted by way of mediation, by way of neutral evaluation, by way of expert determination, by way of dispute boards, and by way of adjudication. Only after you have considered all of these methods do you really want to go down the path of arbitration or litigation, for example. And coming out of COVID-19, you really have to appreciate that parties don't want to have their disputes taken to task. They want to sit down at the table and come to some form of a settlement that is amicable to both parties and to the best interest of all parties, so they can move forward with their projects. And that's it, a quick roundabout trip, and I can now open this up to take questions if need be. Gentlemen, yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your so much valuable thoughts, sir. I think it was so much overwhelming with your thoughts that we are intaking, sir. Okay, sir. Coming to the questions, sir. Sir, I have a question to you, sir. Sir, how do you see the scenario of the construction arbitration in comparison to Singapore and India, sir? How do you see that?
Well, okay. The starting point is this. You're saying arbitration in comparison with Singapore and India. Yeah. I think arbitration around the world is the same. You have the same principles, same framework, and everything that you have in place. You have institutional arbitration, you have ad hoc arbitration, you have a structure and a framework that goes on. The skills and expertise I've had, because I'm involved in the Society of Construction Law, and there is a Society of Construction Law in India. I'm quite familiar with many of the practitioners out in India. And I think they all come with just as much expertise and skills as the practitioners here in Singapore. Now, when you say compare Singapore and India, I think it's important to highlight to you that in the construction industry in Singapore, because we have this adjudication regime, everybody's going to adjudication. So you don't find many of the construction industry disputes going to arbitration. So therein lies one of the difference. In countries like Australia, New Zealand, UK, they all go to construction issues are all dealt with by way of adjudication as opposed to arbitration. All right, so therein lies one of the difference. The next difference is the fact that Singapore has been promoting mediation to a large extent. Singapore has got a framework for neutral evaluation and expert determination, and these are all methods that you're going to find people are turning to rather than going into arbitration. So again, coming out of COVID-19, I honestly believe you're going to find a lot more of the Singapore parties turning to these methods of dispute resolution rather than going into arbitration. And what you're going to find is that while the contracts provide for arbitration, parties are actually going to pick up the phone and say, listen, can we have this matter mediated? Hey, listen, can we think about having an expert determination? I know there are arbitration clauses in the contract, but can we go to an expert, get the expert to determine 1 day, 2 days, and that's it. So therein lies this difference about what Singapore and India might be like. Because I don't think in India you appreciate the full extent of the alternative, the appropriate alternatives that you have. All right?
Yes,
I hope I answered that.
Sir,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Anil, I have a question to you.
Yes.
In expert determination, the scope of the dispute is only limited to the question of fact and not to the question of law. Then how come the expert determination is binding?
There are two different issues. Binding has got nothing to do with legality and not legal issues.
Okay.
The point about binding is that an agreement is binding, right? There are no legal issues in an agreement. An agreement is an understanding between two parties. So your question is two different topics. So let's talk about binding first. The nature of binding is when you sign on an agreement, it's binding, right? So when you get into a neutral evaluation, when you get into an expert determination, you just have to decide, I want the document binding, right? So this concept of binding, people get it very confused because they say, oh, you're talking about a method that's not binding. Sorry, that's not how it works. The starting point is this. You decide that it's a technical issue that you need resolved. You decide that you want to use, for example, the Singapore Institute of Architects expert determination platform, right? And you decide from the go, if the agreement doesn't say it's binding, you just decide, I want it binding. That means we are going to stick by it, and that's it. So it's a very different thing from saying expert determination, legal issues, and bindingness. Bindingness is any agreement is binding. You don't have to have a legal argument for that. All right?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Sir, and one more thing, sir. Since this construction industry is more relating to a civil engineer, do you think someone who is into this construction arbitration as an arbitrator, should he possess the skill, knowledge of a civil engineer also?
Okay, so starting point is this. Again, your question is two or three folds. The first fold is that construction issues are only a civil engineer. Not true. You've got quantity surveyors, you've got architects, and then infrastructure projects, yes, civil engineer, right? But construction projects, you're talking about architects. And all of those still require quantity surveyors in some countries. In some of the European countries, you don't have quantity surveyors. The concept of quantity surveyors, but in Asian countries, you have the concept of quantity surveyors. So you have quantity surveyors as well. So now let's come to the second part of your question about whether those skills are relevant and important. Okay, there are two parts to that as well. Having knowledge, specific knowledge on construction projects is helpful. All right. And that is one of the reasons why you have construction matters usually go to arbitration, or let's say mining project. financial institutions and all that all turn to arbitration because they want people with the expertise, all right, skills. But the big picture is this: if you understand the fundamentals of arbitration, you understand what it's about. Someone once told me a long time ago that if you want justice, go to court. If you want natural justice, you go to arbitration, right? So there's this point about natural justice in an arbitration. There is this point about how arbitration hearings are dealt with. There is this point about arbitration process requires parties presenting their case in a structured fashion, parties presenting their statements of the witnesses, parties presenting their legal arguments. So if you're an arbitrator like me, I mean, a sensible arbitrator would ask parties for all of these things in place. And if you have all of those things in place, if you understand the fundamentals of arbitration, you don't need to be an expert in the field to become an arbitrator. Likewise, on the flip side of the coin is this: you don't need to be just a lawyer to be an arbitrator. You can have civil engineers, you can have quantity surveyors, you can have architects who are all arbitrators. It is really about appreciating the nuances of the project and then moving forward and then making a decision. Now, coupled with that comes this thing, with due respect, please don't expect you to become an arbitrator at 25. You can become an arbitrator, but whether you can decide on matters and then hold arbitration hearings, that's a whole different ballgame. If you understand the fundamentals of arbitration, again, I say fundamentals of arbitration, and you appreciate what it's about, it comes with a whole lot of experience over the years running projects as counsel, as competing parties, as project managers, to appreciate where you can get to. So while in the start you talked about ADR and getting people to be aware about ADR, you then narrowed it down to arbitration and facilitating arbitration. The view I get is that everybody seems to want to just jump on the bandwagon of becoming arbitrators, not arbitration practitioners, but they want to become arbitrators because they think that's the fastest way of getting to wherever they want to. But they don't appreciate that really what you're talking about is becoming, if you're lawyers, it's really about becoming an arbitration practitioner. Whether it's for the plaintiffs, for the defendants, and then moving along and getting to where you want to eventually. But the crux of your question, civil engineering skills are important, helpful, but as much as architectural skills are important and helpful, quantity surveying skills are important and helpful. All of these skills are helpful. And, legal knowledge, yes, but it's not necessary to have full legal knowledge because you have the parties there helping you. The parties will present their case, the parties will present their legal arguments, and if you as an arbitrator sitting there have issues, you just have to ask the parties, can you address me on this issue? I understand that this is a legal point, address me on this issue. I understand that this is a technical point, I want you parties to address with your parties representative who are experts in that particular field, whether it's civil engineering's part for infrastructure projects or architects for a building contract. Give me those technical points, and then you can move along. All right?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for putting the answer very clearly, sir. Thank you, sir. We have Ram Subramaniam sir with us to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Anil.
Yes, sir.
So thank you so much for giving a whole exotic menu of dispute, adjudication and avoidance options. Especially you mentioned about DAAB in FIDIC-based contracts. In fact, I was part of a couple of projects where we had DAAB.
Yes.
And it worked very nicely.
Yes.
Of course, it was in the Middle East.
Yes.
But there is a misconception among the developers. They are thinking that having the DAAB in the contract, it increases the bid price by the contracts. So first thing, what they are doing, they are removing that. So what is your take on that?
Okay, so now there are a couple of aspects first, right?
Yeah.
Let me just share one point. I started talking about dispute boards about 10 years ago. And in Singapore, especially the CIOB had a joint conference with the SISV and all that. CIOB is Chartered Institute of Builders, SISV, the Singapore Institute of Valuers, Surveyors and Valuers and all that. And it hasn't been moving. Until about 2 years ago, we had something called we have a protocol in Singapore that deals with $500 million and above projects to be dealt with by dispute boards. Okay. Now, my take is that you really don't need. You can have dispute boards for any projects. Okay, and it's a question of just having either a one-man board member or a three-man board member if you think it's necessary. Right, but you see, like for example, the example I gave you of the European country project that's taking place in Indonesia, they've decided on a one-man adjudicator, and they can decide whether or not they want it ad hoc or they want it on a fixed fee. Okay. But in my take is this: it's not necessary for a fixed fee. What it should be, my take is this: it should be an every 2 or 3 months, when an issue arises and it needs to be dealt with, then the the dispute board member comes on board, and then his time clocks. All right. So let's leave out the 3-man board first, and let's look at a 1-man board. Yeah. Right? What would you prefer? Would you prefer to have a 1-man board come on at a point of time when there is an issue not blown out of proportion dispute yet, who then clocks maybe 20 or 30 hours looking at it, considering it, and giving the recommendation, and the parties go back and negotiate a settlement, right? So 30 hours up. Or do you want it to go into a full-blown arbitration where both parties appoint their lawyers, and you're talking about 100 hours of work? So it's, to me, the parties that you're talking about haven't been taught fundamentally what it is about, and they haven't been taught what the mathematics of it is. Yeah. Right. Both of which I can sit down and tell you in 5 minutes. The mathematics of it is not rocket science. It is 30 hours of dealing with an issue, as opposed to 100 hours of 2 parties with their lawyers and an arbitrator, and sometimes 3 arbitrators appointed, and then going forward. All right. So, I mean, I have a project where, yes, I'll tell you that. I'm in an arbitration matter now at the moment, and I represent a state-owned China company because I speak Mandarin. I speak fluent Mandarin as well. Okay. And I act for them. And the contract required a 3-man arbitration panel, right? Now, the claimants, when they gave the notice to arbitrate, they recommended one arbitrator, their particular arbitrator. Mm-hmm. And what I recommended to my clients is very simple. I said, listen, let's agree on the same arbitrator, but tell the parties, we will agree to this arbitrator as long as we can agree that only one arbitrator is required. Done. Done. So again, it is not rocket science. It's not cast in stone. If people appreciate the nuances of what you're talking about, right? And it needs to be explained correctly. It cannot be explained that, you get 3 people on board, 1 architect, 1 civil engineer, and 1 lawyer, pay them every month to watch over your problems. That's not what a dispute board is about. Dispute board is a board that is set up there to consider your problems and have a solution for you made available that you will take forward. If you choose for it to be binding, you live by it. But if you choose for it to be a guidance, you can then negotiate a settlement. That's it. You see, so the problem that Mr. Rami that you have is that people, they don't appreciate what it is. They just think it's just added cost. Now again, when you say the bid, the tender, it's really about, let's do the maths on it. Let's sit down and do the maths on it. Okay, getting one single dispute board chap was going to cost you this much. If you decide to pay him monthly, it's going to cost you this much. But let's take a look at an arbitrator, at which stage parties, lawyers, so on and so forth. You either pay an arbitrator, but you don't pay just the arbitrator. You pay your lawyer's fees as well. The opposing party also pays the lawyer's fees. So when you put all of those things together, mathematically, it comes out quite sensible. I hope you answer that.
I fully agree with you. So, in a nutshell, instead of having a full DAB board with us, we can have on-call basis, isn't it? That's what.
Exactly, and ad hoc. Yes, you can. Okay. Yes, you can. And even if the contract provides for a standing, You can decide not to.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
Especially in this part of the world, in the Indian continent.
Yeah.
So even FIDIC is a new concept here. You may know that.
Yeah, I mean, talking about that, you started off your introduction by saying that I've shown you all. I can't remember the term you used, but in reality,
yeah,
that's why I said this is appropriate, because you know what? It's not unique. It's not new. It's things that have been there. It's just that you don't have the knowledge. You don't have the appreciation. You don't understand that there are these methods of dispute resolution that really take you a long way forward.
Yeah. In continuation to that question,
yes, sir.
Again, regarding this DAB, when it comes to country like India, where it is quite new, what do you think about the legality of it?
Legality, okay. So I don't know what your acts and all those things are in place, but deciding that it's a dispute resolution mechanism that is in your contract. So the starting point would be, how are your dispute resolution mechanisms in your contracts interpreted by law? All right. So if parties agree to this dispute resolution mechanism and it's a term in the agreement, I don't see why there should be a problem. So they need to appreciate that it's what you contract to do.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't contract to do it at the point of time that you enter into the agreement, there's nothing stopping parties to decide later on doing it. And COVID-19 is a perfect example of why parties don't want to go into arbitration. Parties want to pick up the phone and say, listen, we have a problem, but we've got this Anil who's come on and talked to us about this incredible dispute resolution mechanism that are available. Can we consider that? The other party would say, why? Because we can get the matter resolved expeditiously at a savings of cost, and not struggling to pay our legal fees and then going to arbitration.
Yeah.
The other party will say, but the contract provides for arbitration. The answer is yes, we can decide to take a step forward first. Of course, you must have a party that's amicable to it. You don't want to have a party then goes to court and stays the proceedings and says, oh, sorry, it's an arbitration clause. It's really about parties being collaborative to some extent. All right?
True, very true. I fully agree with you.
Thank you.
And again, thank you so much for giving an exotic menu of options. That's what I
meant. What you said, sorry, but it's not exotic. That's the point. The whole point is that it's not exotic. It's what is available.
Yeah.
So many places are starting to use that.
Yes.
I mean, if you want real exotic, it's online dispute resolution. It's really exotic. But again, 3 years ago, I wrote my first paper on it. Last year, I wrote another paper. The next one, I'm keeping it for next year, because this year I'm going to put out a paper on mediation, some concepts about mediation. Again, in the Asian Journal of Mediation, I'm hoping to wrap up the paper by next week and submit it to the editors, the publishers for their consideration. But next year, I'll do a follow-on paper on online dispute resolution as well.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
In fact, we request you to make another session on the ODR.
Oh yes, I can. I've done that. In June, I spoke at the International Mediation Institute and the Singapore International Mediation Institute on ODR.
Okay.
A month later, I spoke in the Asian International Arbitration Center on the legalities and privacy and all of those things relating to ODR as well. So I can do that, not a problem.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Suraj. Over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So we have
Suraj, I have a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Anil.
Yes,
so thank you. It's a nice presentations. So I have one question.
Yes.
Actually, civil engineers, we have a feeling if we go to any arbitrator, they will charge abnormally. So how much you charge? It is on the somewhat ad hoc basis or some percentage wise of the total cost?
Okay. Well, which method of dispute resolution are you talking about?
No, any method, because we have some disputes.
Okay, so what you must realize is this, right? In Singapore, we don't take a percentage of the value. I mean, there's laws going to be introduced on some adjustments to that, but primarily we don't do that. Primarily what we do is that we look at time costs. All right, so again, what I had mentioned to Mr. Subramaniam is this. If you come to and approach me and he says, I want an arbitration done, then you're talking about a full-blown notice, response, a statement of case, a statement of defense, and witness statements, and so on and so forth. So I could then tell you, you're looking at 100, 150 hours at $400 an hour, right?
Wow.
Okay, it could be the case. Okay, or if you say, Anil, we would like to appoint you as a dispute board, a sole dispute board, to give a neutral evaluation of the matters. Okay, a dispute board has got determinations and all that, or a neutral evaluator to evaluate, right? And then we want it binding. It could be a case of me telling you, the parties, listen, I want you to give me your case in 50, no more than 50 pages, with no more than 200 supporting documents, succinctly put it across. That means it's almost like your in trial is your opening statement. Give me your opening statement, and the other party give me the opening statement, and then I review it. And you're talking about maybe 20 hours, 30 hours. So it's really, again, I often use this term. It's not rocket science. It's a matter of just sitting down and explaining how the framework works.
So first itself you confirm that your fees is and all, right?
Exactly. And we always tell parties, send us the document so we can size it up and then give you a point, right? Now, you, sir, you're an expert. You're a civil engineer, so yes. You could effectively be talking about giving an expert determination, because you're an expert in the field. And yes. Parties, if they give you a regard, they can then turn to you and say, listen, we have a dispute that's really technical. I don't want to go get my expert and then come with the lawyers and then into arbitration. They don't want to get an expert and this thing. Can we both agree that we appoint you as an expert, that you give us a determination of the matter? So the framework can be set very clearly.
Okay, fine.
So I had a matter where we had a High Court matter. I was working in-house with the quantity surveyors at that point in time, and we had two parties that were in trial, and halfway through the trial, they were taking a month's break, and then the judge said, we are now down to this technical issue, right? Why don't you go to the company I was working for was called Davis Langdon and CI. It was eventually acquired by Arcadis, right? But it was Davis Langdon and CI, and said, go and see the chairman and get an expert determination on the quantum of cement that was used. Right? It came to us. Right? They came to us, and I was, because the in-house lawyer, the lawyer said, the judge recommended that we come to your chairman and this thing. So we set the framework. We said, okay. In terms of reference of the expert determination, are you okay? We want you all to set out the questions that you want addressed, and we'll do that. Would you all agree that if this is the terms of reference that we have, that the expert determination that we give, it will be binding and you guys go back to court? Agreed. So it's all about parties agreeing to it. So what happened was that a month later, when they went back to court, out of let's say they had about 30 issues to be dealt with, they got rid of about 15 issues straight off the table. The number of days in trial was narrowed down, and this is what you have. So it's an amazing exercise, you see. It's really about parties. It's not it's not unique.
Right. Correct. Agreed. Yes.
And
Thank you.
Coming out of COVID-19, people do not want to go into arbitration. They don't want to have a fight because they're making ends meet. They want to come to the table. They want to be able to resolve their dispute in a manner that's really helpful to all of them, and that's what it's going to be.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Suraj.
Sir, we have one question from the audience, sir.
Yes, sir.
Manu Prasad Satish, Project Manager, Amjad Engineering and Contracting. He asks that if a dispute arises between the employer and contractor, who has the authority to finalize DAB, and how the agreements and payment arrangements are made?
Okay. The authority to have it as a DAB, dispute board, must be in the contract. It has to be in the contract. If you're using a staffinic contract, it's in there, provided in there. If it's a contract that you decide that there's a thing, so it's no party has authority over it. Remember, dispute resolution mechanisms are mechanisms that are there that parties agree to at the end of the day. You must appreciate that parties must agree to it. So that's the starting point. Now, when you talk about payment and all that, you're talking about the board, who pays for it. It must be contracted for. It must be part of the tender. So like the one that I'm on, the project, it's tendered for and it's catered for. You understand? So again, it's a decision that has to be made in the start. It cannot be a decision made, just because Anil has given an exciting talk. Let's go DAB. Let's go that method. Parties must agree, right? And then if it's not contracted for in the start and you're coming to the table now, my suggestion is that both parties better agree to share the cost, because the flip side is very simple. Let's go to arbitration. You pay your cost, I pay my cost. We fight it out. We take a long time, which is it. So when you look at the contract, if it doesn't have a DAB, and if you feel that it's an exciting option to go for, parties need to sit down and talk about it. And the parties cannot dictate, I'm, a government-linked board organization, so sorry, cannot. Okay, if cannot, then let's go to arbitration and let's drag it out and take it as long as you want to. Or do you want to come to the table, sit down, have this resolved in 6 months, right? And go on, right? So one thing I wanted to highlight was this. I'm the Singapore representative to the Dispute Resolution Board Foundation. So go take a look at their website, and they've got very exciting things. And then we are encouraging dispute boards worldwide, and we're moving on different exercises to do that, right? So it might be an option that you want to put in your contract, or if it's not in your contract, it's an option that you want to try and get to. Of course, parties have to agree, because if not, you have these applications taken out because one party will say, sorry, it's arbitration or nothing, right? So really, it's about parties coming to a consensus, and which is another point, collaboration. I am going to be presenting another paper, another webinar in early November, and it's about collaborative contracting. It's talking about how people really need to look at how they want to be working together and not allocating the risk to one party and all that. So dispute resolution is one major aspect of that, of how to try and have your matters resolved in an amicable fashion. All right? Yes,
sir. I think it was very clear. I hope Bhanu Prasad sir also gets clear with the answer. Sir, and one more question from Mr. Siddiq, Deputy Project Manager, DFC-CIL. He asked that it is learned that for government cases of arbitrations, for example, NHAI, most of arbitration cases are won by contractor than the employer. Does it mean that the government system is not fully prepared for the ADR and extensive training has to be done on the regular basis in regards to ADR?
Okay, so my starting point is this. I'm not familiar with the exact aspect of what he talked about in government, right? He's saying that contractors win against the government in arbitration. Is that what he's saying?
Sorry, sir. Please.
What did he say? He said that government projects, arbitrations are usually won by the contractors.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well,
that is what he means.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a subjective view on it. Okay. I can't make an opinion on that, right? But again, if you go back to the fundamentals of arbitration and how it works, I don't see it being pro-government or pro-anti-government. It's just project-based. It's really about what the project is. And, like I said right at the start, something about natural justice. If you get into arbitration, when I say as an arbitrator, it's never about siding one party. It cannot be about siding one party. If you decide to side one party today, and you decide to side an organization that way, I'm telling you, it just takes 10 arbitrations you hear, and then people are going to get wind of what you are like, and it's goodbye to you, right? So I don't see how arbitrations can work that way, right? Sorry, I don't know whether I've really answered the second part. The second part of the question, can you just repeat that second part of the question?
Sir, he says that does this thing of arbitrations cases which is won by contractors. So does this mean that the government systems are not fully adequate? They do not possess the adequate knowledge in the ADR mechanisms.
Well, No, again, the question is dealing is two different aspects.
Yes, sir.
One aspect is saying about contractors winning against the government,
Yes, sir.
right, in arbitration,
Yes.
and then you're relating that to not understanding India. That doesn't relate. So the question you want to ask is this: while government projects mainly have arbitration clauses, does that mean that the government don't appreciate the extent of ADR mechanisms that they could refer to? That's what his question should be, right?
Yes,
If that's the question, yes, I would say yes, because again, I understand in India you have a lot of you use a lot of FIDIC contracts, and you modify the FIDIC contracts. So the FIDIC contracts all have got DABs and all of those things. Where are those? I mean, what are you all doing about it? Right? I mean, I'll give you an interesting example. The Malaysian Institute of Architects have got an adjudication provision, and they've had adjudication rules long before the Malaysia came out with a statutory provision for adjudication. So the architects had it a long time, but they were never using it. They never practiced it, and they never used it, and they never used that method of dispute resolution. So what they should have done is that use that more, and they would have been fine. All right.
Yes, sir. I hope he's clear with your answer, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, I think we'll wind up the session with this, sir. We'll go to the vote of thanks by Ms. Soundarya from the team of Beam, sir.
Thank you.
Please hold some for seconds.
Sir, before that, we have another participant, Mr. Shaktivel Manikam from Doha. We want to ask a question to our keynote speaker. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hi there.
Yeah, yes, sir. Good evening.
Evening.
I'm Shaktivel here from Doha. I have a question to you a little bit. I need to explain on it. You know, in Doha, in particular in Middle East, employers are using bespoke form of contracts, you know, which includes some dispute resolution mechanism. In reality, you know, contractors are mostly agreeing to those dispute resolution mechanisms without fully understanding the process. But, you know, when dispute comes, parties are spending a lot of time to agree on the procedure before reaching to the right mechanism. Could you please advise how these issues can be expeditiously handled?
Well, that's very easy. If let's say your contract is going to have an arbitration clause, then you must decide on the best method is to decide on an institutional arbitration clause, right? Because an institution would have arbitration provisions, rules, and all that you can follow, right? So use that institution's arbitration rules, and you'll be fine. That's arbitration. If you're using a neutral evaluation or expert determination, you may not have those provisions in that country. But what you could then decide is this: listen, we want to go down the path of neutral evaluation or expert determination, but let's set out the procedure. And to set out the procedure, very simple. It's called Google. Just Google it. In 2 minutes, you'll get examples of what it is. And a lot of examples would come from Singapore. Expert determination, neutral evaluation have got rules and procedures. In my paper, I will give you the hyperlinks to those, and you can look at it, and you can set it out in your agreement. So it should have been done right from the start. It's easy to just say, oh, I want to arbitrate. Oh, it's easy to just say, I want to expert determination. But as much as you contract all the other provisions in your agreement, surely this clause on dispute resolution must also be thought out. What is the process? How do you set it out? Termination clauses, you set out a whole guidelines. Extension of time, you set out the guidelines. So same thing in this dispute resolution mechanism that you adopt, you just set out the guidelines. If you're not sure about the guidelines, Google it, and you'll find answers on and examples of it. If it really doesn't solve it, when my paper comes through, you press the first link that you say Anil Changroth, and he'll give you the answers to that. So it's really setting these things out clearly. Now, if your contract doesn't have it, but when your dispute comes and you decide you want to get into it, then again decide on an institutional approach to the expert determination or the neutral evaluation that you want to follow. And that's very easy for parties to decide. I mean, if you come to the table and you say that we want to try and resolve this dispute and we want to use a different method, you already half battle is done. The next battle is just setting out the framework on what is the procedure you use and how you want to make it binding. All right?
Yep.
I hope I've answered that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We have Suraj to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Anil and Mr. Abdul Aleem, sir. I think it was a very wonderful session on appropriate dispute resolution in the construction industry, sir. It was very much insightful and so much thoughtful. I think the students and the law practitioners would be very happy with your thoughts on this, in particular, related to the other appropriate dispute resolution, that is the neutral evaluation, expert determination, and the dispute boards, and such appropriate dispute resolution. I think people would be very I think they will be like having so much thoughts going out of this session, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And I thank Dr. M.I. Abdul Aleem, sir, the professor and head of the Department of Civil Engineering of PSG Institute of Technology, also for giving us the inaugural address. And thank you so much for being here till the end of the session, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
And on the ending with a note, our next webinar is on 24th October 2020, which is on enforcement of arbitral awards, sir. I hope your presence also to be in that webinar, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all the attendees and participants. Thank you so much.
Thanks to participants staying on. Thank you. And good night.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
For all the participants, we have sent the feedback form for the participant certificate. Please fill the feedback form.